Welcome, everyone, to Rising Out of the Chrysalis Stories That Inspire with Marisa Grace, where we share life stories of struggle and triumph, not only of my own life experiences, but also through the experiences of my guests, as a way to help you have breakthroughs and find hope in your own life. I'm Marisa Grace, and today I have a special guest. Her name is Katie Gross, who has an amazing, aspiring story to share with all of us. Welcome, Katie. So happy to have you here.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I really, really appreciate it, Marissa.
Absolutely. So, Katie, why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us, who you are and what you do.
Yeah, my name is Katie Gross, and I grew up in on the prairies of South Dakota. I knew really early on I wanted to be a nurse, and became a nurse in the early 2000s, and quickly realized and began to do some self-discovery and really started my own healing journey. And I realized that there was like this missing component that I couldn't necessarily identify, that there was an aspect of health and well-being that we weren't talking about. But I didn't see that modeled to me in any of the traditional healthcare settings that I found myself in. And then fast forward to 2016, and I discovered energy medicine or healing touch, more specifically. And in that program, I learned about the energy medicine or the energy system and this metaphysical spiritual side of health and healing. And my eyes were kind of blown open, and it was like, okay, this is really what I was looking for. This is really what I felt like was missing. And I started to have a framework and a concepts around kind of some of these things I intuitively knew. And then where my story kind of goes a little gets really interesting is as I learned more about energy medicine, I quit my traditional job in nursing and I entered into full-time practice where I was doing healing touch for women, primarily with anxiety and depression. Really find their joy, find their voice, and really reconnect with their bodies and finding their creativity. And so I was doing that in practice full time, and my own health began to crumble. I would say crumble. My mental health was really beginning to crash, and I developed nodules on my thyroid. I was diagnosed with a thyroid disorder in my 20s, and the thyroid nodules got so big that it was impacting my ability to swallow and breathe. And so I had it surgically removed. And during that time, I actually suffered a nerve injury. And it was I was less than six people in her entire career that happened, but they severed the nerve to my vocal cord, leaving me without a voice. And
Wow.
so, as a nurse, I knew the physical manifestations of this was they severed the nerve to my vocal cord. But I knew spiritually there was so much more to this, that there was such a bigger lesson to be learned in this experience. And so traditional medicine told me that I would never sound like myself again, and that I may not even have a normal voice quality, and it could take up to a year to get it back. And sitting there in the post anesthesia unit, and I was just never panicked. I just kind of kept repeating, like, why is this happening for me? Like, what is this? Why is this happening for me? Um, and I'm proud to say that you can hear now I do have a voice. I was able to get my voice back in 3 months. And so all of this time of this energy I'd been putting into my clients around energy medicine and these modalities to help our spirits heal from our stories, it everything came full circle. And now I was using those same healing strategies and tools I was teaching my clients, but now I needed to use them on myself. And I needed to trust myself and my intuition and what I needed to be able to get through the healing journey. Um, and so I had it back in 3 months. I attribute it to a variety of different things. Chiropractic care was a huge part of it. Music therapy was magical. She helped me get my voice back through vocal toning. I also experimented with rhythms and drums as I had to really rewire my brain, my breath, and my voice. I mean, I literally did get a new voice in so many ways. And so the rhythm and the drumming was so moving to me. in a time where I didn't have a voice. And music therapy, and then really the cream of the crop for me, the thing I believe was the most effective was cannabis meditation. And so I became right around the same time I lost my voice. I was diagnosed with complex post-traumatic stress from some troubling relationships I had in my childhood, and so the symptoms of post-traumatic stress were, I mean, my body didn't feel safe while I was recovering from this, right? So you can about
Right.
imagine the cortisol pumping. I mean, the biochemical shitstorm, if you will, that was happening in my body at this time of healing. And so cannabis was, I believe cannabis saved my life. I mean, it was the only thing that really helped me stay in the present moment and stay in my body and not just be completely triggered into a spiral of mental health um, disaster, really. Yeah.
Wow, I gotta ask you, like those moments, like those few days, after you got diagnosed, or they told you you lost your voice and it's gonna take, so long to get it back. Like, what was going through your mind? Were you kind of, I know you said you were trying not to, get so, upset or stressed out about it, but what was going through your mind? Were you like questioning, like, why me? Why is this happening now? Why
You
did
know,
this have to happen? Or,
I never questioned that. I knew that there was going to be a story, that there was a reason that this was happening. And I believe now looking back, it really forced me to set boundaries for my own healing. And um, I think that's the purpose that it served. And so I just, instead of going down that road, I just kept gleaning to what is the purpose of why is this happening for me? And then I just did everything I could to reestablish safety in my body. A lot of time barefoot in the grass, and connecting with my community was a huge, huge help. Like, just I had 40 women, in two text message threads that agreed to hold space and intention for me the day of surgery, and so I can just feel their presence now with me and just saying that out loud. And so when I went on that surgery table, I literally put my arms out and I said, I surrender. Like I told the surgeon 2 minutes before we walked into surgery, like, I implicitly trust you. And then to have all of that and then to still lose my voice in less than a 1% chance. Like there had to have been a reason for it. It was just too crazy of a story not to have a purpose. And so I just had to stay there.
do you think when it kind of allowed you to take the time to heal, those traumatic events that you hadn't dealt with all those years? Do you think it
Yeah.
was like the universe telling you, you know what, you need a break because you've been ignoring this for so long that you just
Ab-
need to deal with it now?
Absolutely. Absolutely. As I was processing the experience with one of my best friends, she's known me since I was an ICU nurse back in the early 2000s. And she said, Katie, you've always denied your thyroid problem. You've always denied that it was even a problem. And so, where the story I think gets really interesting, and this is where the physical aspects and the spiritual aspects of care come together. As I was coming to the conclusion and the understanding that there was nothing holistically I was going to do to heal my thyroid at this point, like this had been 20 years of pattern that have been holding out here, right? It was an issue that I had to physically have it removed. I was in my cannabis studies at the time with the Pacific College of Health and Sciences out in San Diego, and I had this reference, and I was like, I wonder if there's anything cannabis and metaphysical related to thyroid in this textbook. And it's incredible index. It's called the Cannabis Health Index by Yul Bleshing, and I flipped to the thyroid page, and it talked about the thyroid being the gland of emotions,
Mm-hmm.
and how women with thyroid disorders have a pattern of fear with their mothers. And I literally was like, oh my gosh, that's what's going on here. And so through this experience, um, there was also a lot of healing that had to happen in that relationship with my mom. And I believe that that wholeheartedly was so much of my energy was held back in my throat, and I think manifested in the form of this experience that I was then able to walk through and correct, I hope. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Bring
When we
balance
don't
to.
deal with our emotions and we suppress them, eventually they manifest into the physical. And, like not to go, if you don't want to go into deep details, you don't have to, but like, what was the main issue of the relationship with your mom that kind of you think triggered that, the
Yeah.
thyroid issues?
So, my mom and I have a very complicated relationship. She divorced my dad when I was 5. She's a single mom. She taught me how to be this like strong, independent, fierce woman. Um, but we also grew up together. And there was a lot of enmeshment, and there was a lot of parentification, if you will. And so the boundaries between where I began and where my mom began was very confusing for me as I grew into a woman. And so when this experience happened, there was kind of a um, things came to a head, if you will. This underlying dynamic between us that had been strained for a very long time came to a head, and in those moments, I for the first time in my life really stood up for myself, and I planted a firm boundary to protect myself, to give myself space, to allow myself to go through the full healing process of what really needed to happen, to be able to get my voice back, but to also begin the intense journey of healing from complex post traumatic stress.
Was there anything else that you did? I know, you did the cannabis that really, helped you stay grounded and but what else did you do? I know you used your tools that you were using to clients, but was there anything else that you incorporated that really helped you like heal, your throat? I mean, it affects, your voice. It's like it affects so much. It's just not, this area here.
Um, well, I have a lot of healing tools. I would say homeopathy is always like one of my go-tos. But for me, it was therapy and boundary work. I think that was another huge component. I have been because of what I saw in my home, in my family members' struggles with mental health as I grew up. I really had this kind of aversion to getting my own mental health diagnoses. And so going to a therapist and getting diagnosed with complex post-traumatic stress, I think was also just this kind of like reality check of like, no, this is the physical, but you have other things going on here that need to be attended to.
And how did you deal with that, the post-traumatic stress? Have you been able to heal completely, or is this still
Mhm.
ongoing process of healing that you're going through?
Yeah, still very much ongoing. I am still having disassociative episodes, which sometimes are really disheartening for me. Um, the worst part for complex post-traumatic stress is that you don't know what's real and what's not real. And there are moments in time where you can all of a sudden be all, like, okay, is this where what is real, what is not real? And for some people out there say, well, if you're smoking cannabis, that you can get perception and reality issues with cannabis too, right? And so there is there is that to be said. But it is also the number one, I think, medicine for post-traumatic stress.
Right.
But
But
that's the biggest.
we could be absolutely non-medicated and still have that perception of
Mhm,
not understanding what's real and what isn't, right?
for sure.
And everything is kind of perception.
Yes.
Even though everybody perceives everything to be similar, we all can look at, let's say, the color red, and we're all going to see that color red differently from each other. So
Hmm.
everyone's perceptions of every object and everything that we see is not identical to each
Yeah.
other. So it is hard for people to understand because, you know, the, our perceptions are different. And the way you see
Hmm.
things is, just slightly different than everybody else. Um, and it doesn't mean that it's bad,
Right.
right? It just means that you just have to find a different way of um, of looking at things and processing them that makes sense to the world that you live in a way.
Right.
And, how do you deal with that when you have these things show up in your life and you have these abstract, visions of things or perceptions of situations? Like how are you dealing with it?
Mm. Yeah, can you ask that question in a little bit different way so I can make sure I understand?
So when situations come, right? Or show
Mhm.
up, and you have, or even things that show up in your life, whether it's, a relationship or a situation, whatever that is, and your perception of it is a little, you know, abstract of it. So, how do you deal with that?
Mm. Well, perception is the reality, right?
Yeah.
Um, for me, I am always looking at the perception. I'm always, so I feel like to some degree you could call me a self-awareness junkie, right? Like I'm always wondering and curious about what leads me to that perception, right? I just
Mm-hmm.
got off of a week of jury duty and talk about judging and perception, right? Is being
Yeah.
in a room full of strangers and then being asked to judge the facts, right? And not the person. Um, and so for me, spiritual direction is what helps me understand my perception so that
Mm-hmm.
when I am out in the world, I understand that what I am experiencing is through the lens of my perception and that might not be everyone's reality, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you find yourself tuning into your intuition a lot, and you've been learning like to use that more?
Yeah, I would say more than anything, it's my body. I've just been so accustomed to disassociating. And so making sure that I'm in my body before I check my intuition, if you will. Because I feel like sometimes if I'm not really fully present and embodied, I can get confused about what might be my intuition if I'm not fully present in my body. So that's really listening to her and trusting her has been, has been a key for me. Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. So I want you to tell everybody exactly, what are you doing now? I know through this whole experience, you found purpose, in a different way. You're already helping people before, but now, this kind of changed your life around,
Yeah.
in a different way. So tell everybody, how are you helping people now, after this experience?
Yeah. So I think, so right as I was going into surgery, I was beginning to explore my voice more in the form of like using for meditation, right? Vocal toning and things. In my practice, I was beginning to do a lot more guided visualizations for people and meeting their future selves and, connecting with babies after miscarriages and things like that. And then I lose my voice, right? Like literally like my bread and butter, like how I am financially secure in the world, right? Is by using my voice. And so that was like a holy crap moment. And then also a moment of like, is the universe telling me that I'm not doing what the universe is asking of me? And this is my way to wake up. And so I now use my voice every day to help people find their bliss. So I do one-on-one sessions with energy medicine and I don't use my voice so much there, but where I use my voice more is in women's circles. So I have a monthly or twice a month full moon and new moon gathering for women where we come together and do a lot of this energy healing together. And so at the end of each of those circles, these end of these healing experiences, I voice guide a meditation. And it's always such a treat to hear people say, oh my gosh, just being able to rest. And I really was able to find that peace within. Your voice is so calming and so soothing. It's just a really beautiful way, a reminder that, it was possible that I almost didn't have that voice and that I am reminded to use it in service. And then I also do CBD meditations and cacao ceremonies out in the community here in the Twin Cities Metro.
Oh,
And same
wonderful.
thing, voice guiding people into and through journeys to find their healing.
Oh, wonderful. I have one other question. Do you find, after your experience, did your voice like change? Did you find like your voice is totally different than it was before? Like different tone, different frequency?
So most people who like if they knew me before and they didn't know that I had surgery and they didn't know that I lost my voice, people say I'd never know you lost your voice. You sound the same as you did before. Um, however, I feel like I don't think that the quality, like the quality of the voice is different. However, how I use my voice is very different. And I'm definitely through the healing process, I've become softer and gentler. And so my voice isn't got that harsh tone to it like it once did.
Well, you definitely have like this beautiful, soothing voice that is very relaxing, and it's
Yeah.
like perfect for the type of work that you do. So
Yeah,
it's
I'll
no
tell you,
wonder, it brings healing to so many people.
yeah,
Um, there's
there's
no
nothing
surprise there.
more magical for me than to watch somebody either wake up from my table or wake up from a ceremony or a circle and have that look of bliss on their face. And to know that, I was able to hold a space for them to get there, right? I'm not the one who's doing the magic. I'm just creating the container for you to get connected and to do your thing. And I'm not the healer. I'm just helping you get to your own healer. But there is an element of me in that, right? And for a long time, I felt bad about that it brought me joy and it brought me satisfaction to see that. But now that I've done more of my own work, I realize that's not, it's okay to feel satisfied and to feel okay with, that product that you can get out of a client's experience.
Wonderful. So tell everybody how they can reach you.
Yeah. So best way to reach me is on my website at yourhigherpathhealing.com. I am also on Instagram and on Facebook, and you can connect with me. You can have a link for to connect to a connection call if you want to talk about energy medicine. If you're curious about cannabis meditation, I'm happy to connect with people and to give them feedback and support in how to find some resources.
Awesome. And I'll have Katie's info below our videos and our podcast. So everyone, Katie, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story of healing and of the struggle that you went through and to finding this purpose with your voice. So thank you so much for sharing that with all of us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you everyone for watching. Please make sure you subscribe. And so you know when these videos come out every week, you get notified. Please share and like our videos so I can bring out more of these to you and to share these wonderful, beautiful stories with all of you so that, we can give you inspiration and hope for healing and hopefully change your life around. So thank you for watching. Until next week.